Flatholms, yes, I'll tell you a little about Flatholms. That, of course, the living accommodations was quite a distance from the tower, the living accommodation, and of course, I suppose officially the keeper should have spent his time at the tower, but it didn't always work like that. Of course, the watchman did night time stay there. That's right. He never come back. The morning watchman, he used to stay at the tower until he put the light out, and then he'd come down and do what he had to do, get the breakfast and that, but for some reason or other, he used to get down there before him, because I could remember one occasion getting down there, and there was a Coltic light, up and down, and I know if you went back down, you had to keep your eye on the light. And I can remember I was scrubbing the kitchen floor or wiping, and I looked out, and the light stuck, and I thought, oh crikey, and I had to run from the quarters right up there and started going again. But the old establishment, when it was a land station, it was a land station at one time, Flatholms, and one of the last keepers to be there as a land station was Bill Jones, who was killed at St Catherine's. He used to tell me that he was there, brought up his family there. When he was first married, he was there, and I think the family dwellings was around the tower, and there was two identical. One, I think it must have been only a two-handed station. And I know they were identical. One was one side of the tower and the other was the other. And I know when I went there as a super, I walked up to it and went in, and one of the quarters was fitted out, furnished for the mechanic. If a mechanic came, that's where he went. And it was quite done out nicely. I didn't realise this. So anyway, I had a look round there and came out and went up the tower and had a look round, walked round the tower, and I thought, well, I'll have another look in. Went into where I thought was the same door, went in and absolutely empty. I thought I was seeing things, I thought I heard the place was haunted, and anyway, I realised afterwards that, but there was the old barracks there. It was all open, and sheep and that used to run about there. And there's an old hospital. They said at the time that it used to be
isolation hospital.
Of some sort of from the plague. They used to take people across to Flatholms and used to spend their last days there. And there was the old furnace and that where they used to burn the. It was quite an eerie place.
I'd already ordered food by letter, presumably, and I had to go on to Flatholms. without even coming ashore. So that would have been 6 months I would have been away by the time I got ashore. And I'd given up smoking, I remember. I used to smoke a pipe. And I deliberately hadn't ordered any tobacco. I thought, well, there's one way of breaking the habit is not having any. So I landed on Flatholm in February 1947. That winter was just beginning to come to an end. And that was a pretty old, eerie spot. Flatholm during the war had been garrisoned by the army. And then there was a big prisoner of war cage at Bridgend, where a lot of German troops were still there. I mean, this was over a year after the end of the war, and we still had prisoners of war. I don't know why we were so slow in repatriating them in retrospect, but there were some pretty tough old fellas up on Flatholm. I think they used to use Flatholm as a place where they put the naughty boys. Same as they did the caskets during the war. It was almost a detention camp. And anybody that caused trouble, they used to ship them out on this island for a while. But it was good for us because we used to get a boat every other day from Barry, run by the RAC, the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, I think. They used to run these boats. So if you wanted anything, they were very, very good to us. And I always remember the Germans were very, very good. They always helped to carry your gear across the island, because there again there was quite a long walk from the landing across the island, carrying gear or pulling gear in a trolley or a barrow. I can't remember what it was, but I remember they were going to do some welding, and there was a big oxygen cylinder, and they're pretty heavy oxygen cylinders. I remember one of these Germans picked this oxygen cylinder up, slung it over his shoulder, and he walked right across the island to the lighthouse and never even put it down once or changed his shoulder. So I thought, well, made a mental note. There's one fellow we're not going to cross. But they were pretty good. Not many of them could speak English, but one or two of them. The cook was very good because he used to break bread every day, and they would do anything for a smoke. They used to make some beautiful inlaid wood work boxes and trays, poker work trays. I remember just for fags. My sister still got those, I believe, that I bought there and then. But the most eerie thing I can remember, always think about when I think about Flatholm, is that first night was the night that the Tampan was sunk, which was a tanker that went on ashore at, I think it may have been Porthcawl. It was certainly somewhere not too far away along that stretch of the Welsh coast. It was the night of the Mumbles lifeboat disasters, and the lifeboat came alongside to get the crew off, touched bottom and capsized, and the whole of the lifeboat crew were lost. And I always remember that night, and the reason I remember it was because normally on Flatholm there was a donkey to carry all the gear, but you could never get hold of this donkey because it used to go and stand in the middle of the pond, as it did on Lundy. You could never. They got cute. 27 days you could do what you like with it. On the 28th, when he knew you had to work, it didn't want to know at all. And I knew there had been a donkey, but I mean, I'm talking about within 4 or 5 hours of landing. I had to keep the 8 to 12. I said, well, you take the first watch and call me at midnight. And that's the way they done it. And they took me up and showed me what to do and how to wind up. The usual thing you get when you're new on a station. And I remember coming across the island to wind up for the midnight, and it was pitch black, and this gale was blowing, and all the old Nissen huts, which the army had were still there, and bits of corrugated iron were flapping and doors were banging. It really was spooky. And you had this feeling that there was something behind you. You knew you were being followed. But of course, you automatically think of these Germans, and I remember in the end, it was blind panic, and you literally run across the island just out of sheer fear, because I don't think I even had a torch. I just gone by where the light was. And I remember winding up and plucking up enough courage to come down the stairs, and there was no light in the tower. Everything was oil. Just groped my way up, because we used to keep a little paraffin lamp at the base of the stairs you used to carry up with you or leave it. There was just enough light to grope your way up the stairs to wind up. And I remember coming back down, plucking up enough courage to walk back across the island to the quarters, which is a matter of, what, 200, 250 yards, something like that. It was not terribly far, but bad enough on a bad night. And there again, you've had this feeling there was something behind you, and I put my hand out just to reassure myself that there was nothing there, and you touched something soft and warm, and by God, I don't think I've ever run so fast in my life before or since. And I felt I was being chased by all the bats in hell. I remember leaping the wall there and going into this fellow's bedroom and waking up and saying, for God's sake, there's something out there. He was after me, he said, oh God man, it's the donkey. It wants its sugar. They hadn't told me that when you go and wind up, this donkey used to follow you across the island and back again and used to give it a bit of sugar. So it was behind me. It was that black I couldn't see it. And when I put my hand in, I obviously touched the thing. But it's the biggest fright I've ever had in my life. If it was happening to me now, I think I would drop dead.
It's about 620 acres island, and there's just the 3 keepers there. Now, records go back that there's probably an Iron Age settlement on Flatholm, and it's been inhabited virtually ever since. There was a Viking colony there. It had been farmed ever since. There was still a farmhouse there with deserted fields. There's a cholera hospital, fortifications built in the 1860s for the defence of the Bristol Channel. That matched up with 2 other forts, one at Brean Down and the other one at Levenot Point. And they were built during the Palmerston era, and of course they're all called Palmerston's Follies. During the last war, it was an anti-aircraft and searchlight battery was on Flatholm. Originally, the tower up until the 1820s was coal-fired. It's the original tower and had a big metal brazier on top, which was actually coal-fired. And in the morning, when they put the fire out, all the ashes went straight over the boundary wall, just by the tower. In fact, there's a great big mountain of ash still there. Yeah, it's a very interesting spot. It's one of the last lighthouses around the coast to go over to oil lights. To be done away with, the old coal-fired brazier was done away with. That was about 1823, I think. And that tower remained during the oil period and during the electric period, which I think that started in about 1940s or so, I should think.
Tower's way up there into the quarters. apparently the light is LED, and they're having to change to 4G network. That's why they're here. And these are the rooms. What they've got now. Guessing this is another way out. Toilet in there. Yeah, this is just by that door. Yeah, nowadays you have to bring your own water because these places are unmanned, so nothing's cleaned out anymore. Here's a picture. Probably can't see that, but little rooms. Lots of batteries, grief. And did you say you're changing to 4G?
Yeah. These things, the parknet pad, it's got similar, it's a Vodafone network, and Vodafone are turning it off in February. Yeah, so everything's going to 4G now. Yes, yeah.
Is that everywhere?
All the lighthouses right across the country.
Yeah.
Scotland, Ireland, yeah, everything.
Grief.
You all use the same protocols, yeah.
So you got quite a job then?
Well, I got 3 stations to do. Everybody being designated their own stations.
And originally, the families and the keepers lived up by the tower, at the top end of the island. But then in 1908, it was modernised, and they built a separate fog signal station and keepers' dwellings halfway down the island, which must have been about a quarter of a mile away from the tower. And from that point, it went over to rock station status, and the keepers' families were taken off. The buildings around the base of the tower were left to become derelict, and they were demolished in 1954. But interestingly enough, the engine room contained two 22 horsepower Hornsby oil engines with their compressors. The sole function was to pump up the air for the siren. And there's an virtually identical engine room and setup at Nash Point, which is, I think, about 20-30 miles away, which is still to be seen. And of course, that's still accessible. The last I heard was when Flatholm was demanned, the engine room was just sealed up. All the Gardner engines, the 3 cylinder Gardner engines, the compressors, the generators, everything, all the equipment is still there, but the engine was just locked and left. So we had to go up and turn the light and to sweep up and clean the lens. You had to walk right away across the island, through the old fort, across the defensive ditch, and up into the tower. But after the demolished at the tower, they built on a mechanics quarters and the standby generator room at the base, in a sort of just a single story building. And that's where the mechanics stay when they're on board. So their quarters were completely separate from ours. When the gulls were nesting, it was a whole place a gull colony, and when they were nesting, you go out at night with a torch, and of course all these gulls suddenly fly up in front of your face, and they're a bit scary. You get used to it. Then around about September time, after the nesting season's over, of course all the gulls suddenly disappear overnight. I think within 24, 48 hours, the island's absolutely clear. There's hardly a sound, all gone. Quite extraordinary. Flatholm, being in the Bristol Channel, is subjected to some of the biggest tides around the country. 40-foot tides are quite normal. And that's the reason why you get the Seven Boar. You've probably heard of the Seven Boar. It's a great wash of water. On flood tide, the Bristol Channel can cope with it, but when it gets into the Severn Estuary, there's such a flood of water trying to squeeze itself into a narrow gap that it builds up, and you get the Seven Boar running all the way up the river. And that's because of the big tides. So really, one of the defences of the island is that it has very strong tidal releases, and the tide's so big. I mean, if you went out there in a boat on the ebb tide, and you put the boat up on the beach, within 5 or 10 minutes it'd be high and dry. It's quite extraordinary.
That's the flight I just come up. We're in this little room just below the lens. There's lots of nice metal work here, very ornate. Let's go around it. Look at all the reflections on the floor as well. And this goes up inside the lens. This goes out on the gallery. There's the special little hand that's on all lighthouses, or should be, used to be. And this is the final little flight up. Let's go up there first then. This is quite hot up here today. Oop. Ooh. Right, here's the lens. And I've just been told it's an LED, the light. It looks really weird to me, but then I know nothing about LEDs. Okay, and that's the lens. And out there Over there is Holm. Background, see all the red shades. When I was on my way here this morning, I could see a red light for ages. So we were coming down this beam here, and when we turned I could see the white light, but I don't think I recorded it very well.
These Victorian gun emplacements were quite clever. They had Moncrief disappearing carriages that the 6-ton rifled guns were attached to. Hidden from view down in these pits, they could be loaded and aimed whilst down, then spring up to fire instantly. The recoil sent them straight back down again, thus making it harder for the enemy to locate them. They used a 52.3 kilogram, 115 pounds Palliser shell.